Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. Nestled in the heart of New England, the small town of Elmwood was often described as idyllic, with picturesque views of rolling hills and historic brick buildings lining its quaint streets. It seemed an unlikely setting for a crime. Yet, like many small towns, it harbored secrets beneath its facade. On a particularly frigid December morning, the residents awoke to a heavy blanket of fog that shrouded the town in an eerie silence. The air was thick with anticipation as snowflakes began to drift from the sky, transforming Elmwood into a winter wonderland. But this picturesque scene would soon give way to horror. It began at the edge of Elmwood, where the local high school stood, an aged institution filled with echoes of laughter and teenage dreams. As the sun peeked over the horizon, its thin rays struggled against the fog, illuminating a solitary figure lying motionless beneath the old oak tree that loomed over the rear entrance. The figure belonged to 17-year-old Melissa Harper, a bright student known for her passion for art and volunteering at the local animal shelter. When the local police arrived, the dense fog became an unwelcome companion, creating an unsettling atmosphere that mirrored the state of the investigation to come. As they cordoned off the area for evidence collection, whispers quickly spread through the community like wildfire. Curiosity danced with fear among the townsfolk. Who would wish harm upon such a spirited girl? The question lingered in the air, heavy and unanswered, foreshadowing the intricate web of connections that would soon unravel. The victim. Melissa Harper was not just a name. She was a bright light in Elmwood. With chestnut brown hair that framed her freckled face, she had an infectious smile that could lift anyone's spirits. Born to a single mother, Claire, a waitress at the local diner, Melissa had grown up understanding the value of hard work and the importance of kindness. At 17, she was a dedicated student with dreams of pursuing art therapy to help children recover from trauma. Community members described her as a gentle soul. She organized weekend art classes for underprivileged kids and could be found volunteering at the animal shelter, where she often fostered abandoned puppies. Her passion extended beyond her artistic endeavors. She wore her heart on her sleeve, encouraging her peers to embrace creativity and support one another. The loss of such a vibrant spirit resonated deeply within the fabric of Elmwood, shattering the sense of safety that blanketed the town. On the day her body was discovered, students recounted last seeing Melissa during lunch, where she animatedly discussed her plans for a holiday art show. A bright red scarf wrapped snugly around her neck seemed to be a shield against the biting cold. Melissa had plans, dreams, and aspirations tightly woven into the narrative of her life. Yet, beneath her radiant surface, a darker undercurrent troubled her path. Friends shared whispers of an ongoing conflict. There had been tensions with a group of classmates, fueled by jealousy over her achievements and kindness. Some speculated that Melissa had been working to mend a rift caused by rumors. In retrospect, these whispers seemed to foreshadow the tragedy that would strike the town, like dark clouds looming over a forgotten meadow. The realization that someone harbored ill will towards such a beloved figure felt unimaginable. But in the shadowed corners of every community, darkness often lurked unnoticed. The crime scene. The oak tree cast a long shadow over the scene, its gnarled branches swaying gently in the cold breeze. The once cheerful ambience of the high school yard had transformed into a stark tableau of tragedy and despair. Police tape flapped ominously in the wind, a bright contrast against the muted earth tones of winter. With each breath of the frigid air, a collective sense of disbelief hung thick, as if the town were collectively holding its breath. Detective Sarah Mitchell was the first to arrive on the scene. With a keen eye and years of experience, she quickly assessed the area, noting the large tree trunk that stood sentinel next to the body, providing a somber backdrop for a young life inexplicably cut short. As she crouched to examine the details, she felt the weight of the townspeople's Gazia solemn group gathered at the edge of the tape, their faces painted with dread and confusion. Melissa lay on the ground, her delicate features frozen in an expression of peace that felt cruelly out of place. The bright red scarf she had worn became a stark reminder of her absence. It was loosely twisted around her neck. Detective Mitchell's heart sank as she acknowledged the chilling implications of the positioning. It suggested not only a struggle, but a deliberate act of violence. Around her, yellow evidence markers began to stake out the perimeter, each one drawing attention to potential the imprint of a shoe in the mud, streaks of red lipstick on the snow, and a scattered array of her school books, which revealed the chaotic moments leading up to her death. Each detail added to the growing narrative surrounding Melissa's final moments. The cold air filled with the sound of snapping cameras as forensic teams began to document the scene in meticulous detail. Nearby, the murmur of speculation wafted through the gathered crowd, the line between inquiry and indignation beginning to blur. As Detective Mitchell pondered the complexity of human behavior, she understood that every town, no matter how quaint, possesses veins of darkness. Elmwood's facade had shattered, and with it, the unthinkable truth that someone close to Melissa had chosen to extinguish her light. The investigation was only beginning, but its ramifications would resonate through the town and challenge its identity forever. The early investigation. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting long shadows across the high school as Detective Sarah Mitchell settled into her cramped office at the Elmwood Police Department. She was determined to piece together the fragments of Melissa Harper's last hours. The atmosphere was tense, the memories of laughter and youthful hope now replaced by an unsettling silence. Detective Mitchell reviewed the initial witness statements. Students had reported hearing raised voices near the oak tree shortly before Melissa was found, but no one had seen anything incriminating. Psychological profiles suggested that if the crime had been committed by a classmate, it was likely fueled by emotions too raw for the quiet town to comprehend. One girl's fear could spiral into jealousy, while another's pride could morph into rage in uncharted territory for the tight-knit community of Elmwood. The investigation team quickly set their sights on those close to Melissa. Clara Benedict, Melissa's best friend, appeared both crushed and defensive during her interview. She was trying to be friends with everyone, she claimed, tears streaming down her cheeks. She never deserved this. Mitchell noted the girl's trembling hands. There was more to be revealed beneath the surface. As the days wore on, a subtle tension permeated the town. Gossip thrived in the absence of credible information. Detective Mitchell received tips about a possible altercation between Melissa and a group of girls known for their sharp tongues and fierce loyalty. It was a small clique that had grown resentful of Melissa's popularity, their idle envy turning into hostility over the months. The detective made a mental note to follow up with these girls, but hoped they wouldn't stall the investigation out of fear or arrogance. Meanwhile, forensic evidence from the scene began to trickle in. The shoe print found in the mud had identified a distinct tread from a brand common among teenage girls. It would take time to analyze, but this small detail was a crucial lead. Each piece, each whisper, felt like it tugged on the detective's core, as hope clashed with horror. Elmwood was far from idyllic. A predator lurked among the very people who had claimed to be the victim's friend. As the sun faded, Detective Mitchell resolved to uncover the truth lurking beneath the surface, determined to ensure that Melissa's spirit was not left without justice. The dead ends. As the investigation into Melissa Harper's murder trudged onward, the frantic pace began to lose its urgency, giving way to frustration and fatigue. Detective Sarah Mitchell sat at her desk, surrounded by a sprawling web of notes, leads, and image prints of potential suspects, yet every lead continued to fall flat, like winter snow melting under an unyielding sun. Interviews with the group of girls who had been close to Melissa proved to be a litany of denials and deflections. They were emotional, each one simultaneously mourning the loss of their classmate, while shying away from confessing to any conflict that could paint them in an unfavorable light. Tensions rose as one girl overheard another's accusation, willing to assume responsibility for their silent involvement in the atmosphere that surrounded her. "I just can't believe someone would do this, Amanda," one of the girls lamented, her voice barely above a whisper, while insisting there couldn't have been any animosity. "We would have never hurt Melissa. She was our friend." Yet Mitchell couldn't shake the feeling that their portrayals were too rehearsed, too convenient. Each misdirect felt like a thin veil over hidden truths, and she was desperate to pull at it. Frustration thickened in the small police department as tips dwindled, and the fog of uncertainty smothered the town. The forensic evidence a promising shoe print yielded no matches, leaving Mitchell to wonder if its familiarity meant few options, not just among classmates, but the broader community. Word began to spread about how the investigation had stalled, and a sinister sense of complacency took root within the populace. The fear that whispered through Elmwood echoed through the hallways of the high school. Night after night, detective work turned into a grueling routine of dead ends. Every door knocked, and every unanswered phone call chipped away at her hope for clarity. Alone in her office, she flipped through files on her desk, feeling the weight of responsibility to the victim and her grieving family. She replayed every detail in her mind: who had been at the high school that morning, what pivotal moment had gone unnoticed. Then, just as it seemed the investigation might dim with despair, a glimmer of potential emerged from an unexpected Cornera voicemail left on Melissa's phone that had gone unheard amidst the whirlwind of chaos. Perhaps, she thought, this could be the breakthrough that would unravel the tightly wound threads of this tragic story. A spark of resolve reignited within her. A break in the case. The office was dimly lit, the glow from Sarah Mitchell's desk lamp casting shadows that danced on the walls as she listened intently to the voicemail. Melissa's voice floated through the silence, bright and hopeful. "Hey, it's me. Just wanted to remind you about the art show planning meeting tomorrow. Let's make it epic." But just as quickly as that buoyant spirit faded, there came a shift, a hushed tone, a crackle on the recording that suggested something deeper. "Oh, and I really need to talk to you about something. It's important. Can you meet me after school by the oak tree?" The detective felt a shiver run down her spine. The oak tree, same place where Melissa's life had been extinguished. The urgency in Melissa's voice hinted at an underlying tension, one that could provide the path toward resolution. Had she been in conflict with someone specific? Was this meeting about her growing fear over issues within her social circle? Her heart raced. This could be the lead that shatters the wall of silence. Mitchell immediately put a call through to Clara Benedict, urging her to return to the station for a follow-up interview. The girl arrived with nervous energy, wringing her hands in front of her. Mitchell wasted no time, laying the voicemail before her. "Clara, what do you know about this conversation? Who was she meeting? Was it you?" Clara's eyes widened as the gravity of the situation sank in, her breath catching as she struggled to process the implications. I didn't know she had something to say," she stammered. "She never mentioned it to me. We had talked about some drama with a few girls. I thought it was over." Her voice trembled as she continued, revealing fragments of whispered threats and stifled emotion. "I just thought, if I stayed out of it," Mitchell interrupted, recognizing that silence had become as damaging as the unspoken words. "Do you think she felt threatened? Did someone tell her to stay away from them?" With a newfound urgency, Clara divulged the underlying tensions that swirled around their social circle. Friendly rivalries had turned into bitter exchanges, words exchanged in anger that felt like daggers pointed at Melissa, who had been caught in a precarious position of bridging divide. The puzzle pieces began to align. A potential suspect materialized in Mitchell's mind. A girl named Rebecca, who had been vocal about her resentment toward Melissa's popularity. Equipped with this new insight, Detective Mitchell understood that Elmwood was ripe with clues, waiting for someone brave enough to perceive them. She could feel excitement bubbling beneath the surface, a renewed determination that propelled her forward. For the first time since the investigation began, perhaps they were inching closer to uncovering the truth behind Melissa's tragic end and unmasking the shadows that loomed over Elmwood. The pieces were falling into place. But as with any investigation, there was still much work to be done before the final picture could be revealed. The suspect. Rebecca Allen had always been the first to make her voice heard, a natural leader with an air of confidence that could draw a crowd. But in recent months, that confidence had morphed into something darker, fueled by jealousy and envy toward Melissa Harper's effortless charm and popularity. Detective Sarah Mitchell found herself staring at a photo of Rebecca as she sat in her office, surrounded by notes that painted an uncomfortable narrative of rivalry and betrayal. As Mitchell made her way to the high school to confront the emerging suspect, events from the past few weeks flooded her and Rebecca's barely veiled disdain during interviews, the way her friends nodded in alignment when Melissa's name was mentioned. It was time to see if their lips would utter more than silence. Arriving at Elmwood High, Mitchell felt the weight of expectation hanging in the air. Students moved through the halls, chatter muted as they eyed her cautiously. She headed towards the art room, where she had learned Rebecca often stayed late, hiding behind walls of paint and canvases to escape the chaos. Knocking on the open door, Mitchell found Rebecca hunched over a sketch, lost in her task. When she looked up, her initial surprise gave way to an unsettling calm. "Detective," she greeted coolly, setting her pencil down. "What brings you here?" "Rebecca, I need to ask you some questions about the night Melissa died," Mitchell said, trying to gauge her reaction. We've heard some troubling things about tensions you may have had with her. A flicker of irritation crossed Rebecca's face before she regained composure. Tensions? We're all friends here. Sure, we had our squabbles, but it's high school. You're making it sound dramatic, Mitchell pressed on. Yet you were the last person she might have wanted to meet based on what she said in her voicemail. What were you two talking about? Rebecca's expression shifted slightly. But beneath the veneer of poise, Mitchell caught a glimpse of something darker, a ripple of anxiety, perhaps. I don't know what you're trying to imply. I never wanted anything violent. We had our disagreements, but that's it. Rivalry doesn't always end amicably, Rebecca, Mitchell replied, allowing a pause to wait her work. And with all of the pressures of friendship clashing against popularity, anything could have pushed you over the edge. Rebecca's facade crumbled for an instant, the tightly held mask of confidence betraying a tremble. You think I would do that? You don't know me, she snapped, her voice rising sharply. But Mitchell had seen enough. The anxiety, the bravado, it all painted a picture too complex to overlook. I'm not here to make assumptions, Rebecca. I just need the truth. In that moment, Mitchell recognized the potential threads connecting the past to the present began to intertwine, suggesting that beneath Rebecca's bravado lay unresolved emotions that could have ignited a tragic confrontation. Whether Rebecca was merely a bystander or holding the key to the case remained to be seen. But one truth became clearer. The darkness surrounding Melissa's death was deeply rooted, and it was time to dig deeper. The detectives' instincts whispered that they might still unravel the whole story hidden in the conflicts of youth. The trial. As the courtroom filled with the whispers of curiosity and unease, Detective Sarah Mitchell took a deep breath, steeling herself against the emotions swirling around her. The trial of Rebecca Allen had become the center of attention in Elmwood, a town grappling with the shocking reality that someone among them had been accused of murder. The air was thick with tension as onlookers filled the seats, mothers holding their children's hands tightly, students exchanging worried glances, and community members cradling their disbelief. Rebecca sat at the defendant's table, looking younger than the 17 years she carried. Her demeanor, careful blend of defiance and fear, projected a sense of fragility that evoked empathy from some and disdain from others. As the prosecution prepared to present their case, the intricacies of the last days of Melissa's life were laid bare, each revelation cutting through the courtroom like a sharpened blade. The prosecution's case painted a portrait of jealousy gone awry, pulling in testimonies from friends who spoke of Rebecca's resentment towards Melissa and the social dynamics that had led to a confrontation at the oak tree. The victim had no idea how close she was to danger, the prosecutor remarked, drawing in a breath of urgency, trying to relay the weight of unspoken threats made in quiet corners. The defense, led by a composed attorney who emphasized Rebecca's character, claimed the evidence against her was circumstantial. No witnesses to a fight, no definitive proof of intent, he argued. Rebecca Allen is not a monster. She is a girl caught in high school drama, misunderstood in her struggles. As the hours turned to days, Mitchell sat in the back of the courtroom, her heart heavy with the burden of the evidence she collected. Each heart-wrenching testimony echoed Melissa's absence, forcing the town to confront its own complicity in the layers of isolation and rivalry that can plague adolescence. Friends who once stood by Rebecca's side began to waver under cross-examination, their memories recalling arguments like distant echoes, inflating the drama that could spiral into violence. The climax of the trial arrived when the voicemail message was finally played for the jury. Melissa's voice, filled with light and urgency, crackled through the speakers, resonating with sorrow within the walls of the courtroom. The moment of her plea hung in the air, transforming the case from merely a legal battle into a poignant reminder of lost potential, leaving many with tear-soaked cheeks and knotted throat. In the closing arguments, the prosecution illuminated the psychological ramifications of betrayal among friends, while the defense urged the jurors to consider the chaos of youth and the difficulty in navigating friendships fraught with emotion. With each word, the complexities of adolescence came crashing together, rendering angry exchanges and fierce rivalries into a chilling dance of fate. As deliberation began, hope and dread intertwined. Elmwood had become a town of reckoning, grappling with the fragility of human connections and the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface. The weight of their decision felt monumental, a reflection not just of Rebecca's choices, but of the collective responsibility held by the community. What belonged to them was the realization that tragedies could be breathed into life through silence and neglect. As the jury returned to the courtroom, a decision loomed, one that would echo through the town long after the verdict was read. The aftermath. The gavel came down with a decisive thud, its echo reverberating through the hushed courtroom. A palpable tension hung in the air as the jury forepersons stood, the envelope containing the verdict trembling slightly in their hands. The words "not guilty" rang out, each syllable slicing through hearts and spirits, in a startling mixture of relief and disbelief. Rebecca Allen was free, but the true cost of that freedom weighed heavily on the townsfolk of Elmwood. As applause erupted from a small group of Rebecca's supporters, the room felt split in two. On one side, relief and celebration danced freely, while on the other, shock and dismay reigned supreme. Detective Sarah Mitchell felt the tight grip of sorrow constricting her chest. Justice had slipped through their fingers like grains of sand. The courtroom filled with voices clamoring for understanding, emotions boiling to the surface in raw, unrestrained expressions. After the verdict, Mitchell stepped into the cool air outside, the winter sun attempting to pierce through the gray clouds that mirrored her mood. The heavy silence of the crowd was punctuated by murmurs of disbelief, whispers of questions that would linger on the town's breath for years. How would they reconcile this outcome? How would they remember Melissa Harper? In the weeks that followed, the community struggled to regain its footing. The high school hallways, once filled with youthful laughter, now bore an air of uncertainty, a shadow lingering in the corners where friendships had once flourished. Clara Benedict, Melissa's closest friend, returned only reluctantly, searching for some semblance of normalcy amid the unrest. "We can't just go back to how it was," she told Mitchell when they met for coffee. There was an uncertainty in her voice, as if she feared confronting a reality riddled with unresolved grief. Meanwhile, Rebecca's return to school was met with a cavalcade of mixed reactions. Some welcomed her back with open arms, but for others, the air bristled with resentment. The social landscape had changed irrevocably. Buoyant laughter at the lunch tables no longer rang with innocence. Instead, uneasy glances bloomed between students, each one grappling with their conscience. Mitchell found herself working late nights, reviewing evidence files that haunted her dreams. The case had left scars, and as she sifted through the threads of the evidence, she discovered unpursued leads and anonymous tip about a rival faction that had emerged among students after the trial. The intensity of their loyalties intensifying after the trial. The verdict. In the years that followed, Melissa's memory lived on as a catalyst for community conversations about youth, mental health, and the pressures of adolescence. A scholarship was established in her honor, aimed at helping aspiring artists find their voices. Elmwood came together for annual arts festivals celebrating creativity and connection, all in Melissa's name. Yet even amidst the healing and remembrance, the shadow of doubt remained. The darkness of that day was never far behind. As time moved on, so too did the memories of those who had stood by Melissa, grappling with the fact that justice had not fully prevailed. But they pledged to honor her spirit by fostering kindness and understanding in a world all too often marred by anger and jealousy. Mitchell recognized that the paths they walked were fraught with unanswered questions, but within her lay a resolve stronger than ever, a commitment to protect the vulnerable, pursuing truth in all its forms, and reminding herself that justice is not always a straight path. In the shadow of loss, an unbreakable will began to emerge, committed to ensuring that the voices of the silenced, like Melissa's, would not be forgotten. Reflection. As the years unfolded, the memory of Melissa Harper lingered in the hearts of those who had known her, becoming a rallying point for change in Elmwood. Detective Sarah Mitchell often found herself staring out of her office window, reflecting on the journey of the investigation and the tragic unraveling of young lives intertwined by circumstance. The guilt and sorrow weighed differently for each person in their small town, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were carrying an invisible burden. Mitchell knew that justice was not always a clear line between right and wrong. The intricacies of human relationships often muddied the waters, revealing the shades of gray that existed in the stories they carried. In remembering Melissa, the community also confronted their own failings, the whispers of jealousy, the silence that allowed rivals to grow hostile, and the pressures young people faced in their quest for acceptance. Commencing her own journey of introspection, Detective Mitchell sought balance amid the chaos. She took to volunteering at local schools to help foster open dialogues about mental health and friendship, recognizing that early intervention could not only heal, but also prevent future tragedies. Engaging in candid conversations with students became her means of reaching back to the innocence that had been shattered too soon. While Melissa's life was taken in its budding beauty, her legacy grew to shape Elmwood. The town rallied together, honoring her brilliance through festivals and scholarships that championed creativity and kindness. In this way, Melissa's voice echoed, reminding everyone of the importance of connection in an often divisive world. Time would heal, but the scars of her loss would always remain, a constant reminder of the fragile nature of youth. As Mitchell continued her work within the community, she held close that everyone deserved to have their stories told, especially those who had been silenced. In every brushstroke of the art shows and every scholarship awarded, she felt a sense of purpose. By reflecting on their shared journey, she was determined to ensure that Melissa's light would never fade, and that from sorrow, seeds of compassion could blossom into a brighter future.